So it seems like you added one extra zero.
Yeah, to the number of years. You mean?
Yeah. Just as someone said, there is a legend of one of the Indian masters, Shantirakshita. In some people think he lived up to 900. And then one of the Indian scholars said the Tibetans have added one more zero. Probably it was 90, not 900. So I think similarly we added one more zero.
Yeah, I've known you for at least 200 years, I'm sure.
So thank you everyone for showing up, coming, giving your time. And again, I would like to start with a few moments to quiet our mind, trying to bring our mind in the moment present, and then trying to have a generally good intentions. From Buddhist point of view, the intentions is extremely important, especially Mahayana Buddhist point of view. Intention more important than the act that you do. With what kind of intention you do. If you do with a great intention, even small act become a great act. Even you do a great act, if your intention not pure, not great, then that doesn't become a really great act as it might seems like or might look like. So it depends on your state of mind, your right intention, motivation become very important. So because of that, and I thought maybe I would like to start with that, okay? So if possible, try to keep your back straight. And that helps to be more alert and more awake and to have more clarity in your mind. At the same time, try to not to be too stiff and tight. Try to make yourself as relaxed and comfortable as possible. Both your body and mind. And then try to feel the weight of your body on the chair. And let your breath flow naturally. And try to observe the breath mindfully. And be aware of what you are observing with the breath as you inhale and exhale naturally. Once your mind is settled down, in the moment, in present, then we can try to think, may all of us coming here together to listen to the talk, to engage in the discussions and the reflection, contemplations. May all of this become cause and conditions for more awakening of our mind, cause and condition to reduce those disturbing negative emotions, and to open our mind to cultivate and improve those positive state of mind. So that we can not only take care of ourselves better, but so we can be more and more help and benefit to other sentient beings. Okay, so yeah, I think there is space here, also in the front here. So Martin and we just discussed earlier that maybe I will kind of discuss maybe an hour or something, and then we'll have a short break to use restroom, to grab something to drink it, and then we will have maybe a half hour or 45 minutes something cautions that I can take. Yeah, I think that is what we kind of more or less kind of discuss about. And topic of today's talk, as you all are aware, is cultivating, cherishing thought for others, and seeing things as real. I would like to start the talk with one of the verses from Buddha, 4 line, where he mentions, and which we recite very often as a reminder of the principal teaching of the Buddhas and practice and teaching of the Buddhas. So the verse, it says, do not commit any unwholesome actions, perform wholesome actions all the time. Subdue your mind thoroughly. That is the teaching of the Buddha. So that is kind of, you can say that Buddha himself kind of contains, all his teaching in that. And in that, what he says in explaining, the conflict, the problem, the suffering that we experience in our life is primarily due to our own unwholesome actions. And that unwholesome action that we engage into comes through is motivated by unwholesome thoughts or mind or emotions. On the other hand, whatever joy, happiness, virtues, good things happen in our life is also a result of our own wholesome actions. And wholesome actions is that those actions that we engage into by being motivated by one of those wholesome thoughts, feelings, emotions. And so in that, Buddha explained, his view is that we are responsible for our experiences, good experiences, bad experiences. I'm responsible for my bad experience as well as I'm responsible for my good experiences. It doesn't mean that there is other factors doesn't contribute, but primarily it comes from that. So we are responsible for our experience because it's due to our own actions, due to unwholesome action, unpleasant experience, due to wholesome actions, pleasant experience. And that unwholesome actions is a result of our unwholesome thoughts, emotions, mind. Whereas the wholesome actions is a result of our own positive virtues or wholesome thoughts and emotions. And therefore, if you go back, then our mind is the creator of all your experience. So mind becomes the most important factors. Our experience a result of our action, and our action a result of our mind. And that is why the way he says, subdue your mind thoroughly, and that is the teaching of the Buddha. That is the main teachings of the Buddha is all to do how to transform our mind. It's about subduing, transforming our mind. How to reduce those disturbing negative emotions. How to cultivate and increase those positive virtues state of minds. And that is primarily all the Buddhist practice and teachings is based on that. So in that, taking care of your mind becomes most crucial, important. So in relation to that, then today's topics is we experience a lot of pain, suffering, unhappiness due to our many different state of minds, worry, fears, anxieties, self-doubt, self-loathing, self-hatred, depressions, agitations, impatience, frustrations, angers, rages. Due to all of that, we all suffer in so many different ways. Not only we suffer when we are in those state of mind, we tend to be more aggressive towards others. We tend to be more unkind to others. We tend to be, more impatient with others. And with that kind of thing, then it also bring more pain, suffering to others. And again, these are not something very difficult or philosophy to understand. It's just our experience, our everyday experience. If we observe, if we try to observe our mind, our emotions, and the effect of that on ourselves and in relation to others, if you observe, if you give enough time to observe, look inside, you can see that. You can understand that. It's nothing complicating philosophy. If we give enough time to look and observe, and the Buddha explained all these different, feelings, emotions, thought, that disturb our mind, that make our mind not peaceful, not calm, not happy. It's rooted in what we call afflictive emotions, such as anger, or we call attachments, and the ignorance. Primarily, they are rooted in those three state of minds. And even with that, even the anger and the attachment is very rooted in that ignorance, we call fundamental ignorance. And together with that fundamental ignorance, with what we call self-centeredness or selfish attitude, together of those two, then all other negative emotions arises. And then all the pain, sufferings arises. And so, in one of the great Indian master, Dhammarakshita, in his quite famous writing, "Will of Sharp Weapon," in that he used this example, that ignorance as the devil, and that self-centeredness as the messenger of that devil. And together with that internal devil of that ignorance, through the support of the assistant or the messenger of that selfish attitude or self-centeredness, then it harms you, it harms others. And therefore, many of the masters says they are the worst enemy. They are the worst enemy. If you don't have that inner enemy of those afflictive emotions, you wouldn't have external enemy. If you have that internal enemy, even you don't have anyone to bother you, still things will bother you. You You can run away in a cave where there's no one there to disturb you. But if we have problem with our anger, rages, and other those negative emotions, the wind will upset you. You know, the weather will upset you. You know, the sound of the animal would upset you. So, therefore, there will be something that will upset you all the time. So even though there is no such called external enemy, but still there is something that disturbs and upsets you. Regardless, wherever you go, even where there's no one. And that is why they said this is the worst enemy. This is the worst enemy. The internal enemy. And so here he used the internal devil or enemy, you know. So those are the those two are the very root of all the problem, conflict, sufferings. Sometimes we feel the root of our conflict and problem is our differences, different opinions, isn't it? Because we have different opinion in everything almost. There is a Tibetan saying, you know, 100 people, 100 mind. 100 mind, 100 opinion. And it's true. You know. But the problem is not, the problem on conflict is not because of the different opinion or different mind, but it is due to that, you know, our ego, you know, the self-centeredness and the ego. When you don't have that kind of ego, you can have differences, you can still respect each other's, and you can still work out and find a way to work with that, without that being a problem. Without that being a problem, without that being a source of conflict. But when there is an ego involved, you know, where I feel my opinion is better, right, superior than yours, with that kind of attitude, then that is where the problem comes. That is where the clashes come. That is when it becomes a problem. And so therefore, if we really analyze and observe more deeply, you know, the root of the conflict and problem, suffering, problem is not the different opinion and differences, is more, something more than that. And is more rooted in that, the sense of self-importance, you know, the ego, the self-centeredness, you know. So those two being the main, you know, and that ego or the self-centeredness is very much rooted in what we call this self-grasping ignorance. And this self-grasping ignorance is that misperceive the reality of self and all other things. So that being the root of all this conflict, problem, and sufferings. So therefore, the more we are able to reduce that, the more we are able to overcome that. Less problem there is from our side, less conflict, less pain, less sufferings, less different afflictive emotion arising on the basis of those. And when there's a less disturbing negative emotions arising on the basis of that, there's less disturbing minds. There's more peace, more calm. And when we are able to find more calm, more peaceful, in generally, we are able to be more patient, less aggressive, and more help to others. And so therefore, in order to reduce that, then we need to cultivate the mind, because those mind, the ignorance and that self-centeredness, we cannot get rid of them by externally factors, by some kind of surgery or some kind of taking medicine or by taking some kind of substance. It's something internal, and it has to deal with something internally and with a different mind. And so you need to develop a mind that contradicts or confront that. And that is where cultivating the wisdom that sees or relies as they are, the wisdom that sees the ultimate nature or ultimate reality of the things, and that can counter the ignorance that misperceive the reality of the objects, of the things. And by cultivating the cherishing thought for others, minds such as true love, compassion, the awakened mind of bodhicitta, which are the mind that cherish others more, that counters the self-centeredness, the selfish attitude. And so the more, the stronger and the more you are able to develop those two states of minds, the cherishing thought for others and the wisdom realizing the things as they are, the more powerful you become, the more strong they become, then you are able to reduce the ignorance and the selfish attitude or self-centeredness. And slowly, slowly you overcome them completely. And not only by overcoming completely, the Buddha explained that actually we can be completely free from all the sufferings permanently by overcoming the root of all these sufferings. Not only temporarily, but permanently. It is possible. It is possible. So he mentioned, if we can get very root of all this afflictive emotion, those two things, then we can end all the suffering permanently by ending the very root of all the sufferings, and thereby, finding permanent happiness, what he calls cessations, true happiness. So that is of course, then seeing or perceiving things as they are, or the ultimate truth, ultimate reality. Of course, different school of thoughts have different view, ideas, what is ultimate truth, what is ultimate realities, Even among the Buddhists, there are primarily 4 schools of thoughts. Even among them, they have different opinions. What is the ultimate reality? Or what is the ultimate nature of things? But without going so much detail, I'm going to just kind of touch on a little bit more from the what you call from the school of thoughts, what we known as middle school of thoughts or Madhyamika school of thoughts. From that point of view, and their understanding and their presentations and understanding is that whatever objects appear to our minds, there's appearance of that objects to exist by itself inherently, from its own side by itself. Not only it appears that way, so when I look at these flowers, there is appearance of flower by itself from its own side inherently. Not only there is appearance, then I perceive immediately after the appearance, my mind perceives, there is a flower from its own side inherently. Kind of belief or perceive to believing the appearance. And they said that appearance is the deceptive appearance. And that perception is the ignorance, and that is the way it becomes the cause, the ignorant cause of that. So first there is that, there is flower by itself from its own side, objectively. And then on top of that, then our mind project, it is a beautiful flowers or ugly flowers, attractive flowers, non-attractive flowers, good, bad, so all different, our mind project different things. And according to how we project that, then different emotion arises. When my mind projects, this is a nice, is a beautiful, is attractive, attachments, craving, attachment arises towards that. When my mind projects, this is very ugly, this is very bad, this is very negative, unpleasant, ugly, so forth, then different feelings arises. Sense of aversion towards that arises. Disdain, dislike, aversions arises. That give rise to anger and other emotions. Do you think that is the case? How to
I think they're objectively beautiful.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, if you observe how different feelings, emotion arise, liking and disliking towards certain objects, attachment or aversion towards certain objects, how does it arise? It arises based on what our mind project that object to be. If your mind project that object something as nice, something meaningful, something good, something beneficial, something positive, something you like that object. There is a feeling of liking the objects, having a attachment or craving for that object. On the other hand, it's the same object, your mind kind of project it as something bad, negative, harmful, whatever different negative qualities that your mind project, then you have different feelings, dislike, aversions. I think that's our experience. If we pay attention to that, it's quite clear. So we can see how different feelings, such as aversions or craving or attachment, arises on the basis of how we project the objects, how we interpret the objects, or how we perceive the objects, project. And that projection comes on the basis that there is a flower from its own side. Do you get it? If you think there is no flower from its own side, then there's no object to project anything. But then you believe first, there is a belief that there is an object from its own side, objectively there. On the basis of that, then next the projection comes. Good, bad, attractive, unattractive, all that. So therefore, even that projections arise, the projection which is the cause of the aversions and attachment, that projection arises on the basis of perceiving that there is object from its own side, objectively there. And that mind that perceives the object to exist by itself or from its own side or objectively, then become the cause of the root of all other the projections, as well as the craving or aversions. And so that is what they call the ignorance, and that is how they explain the ignorance being the root of all other delusions. And therefore, if you can cut the ignorance, then there is no more. If you don't have any perception or belief that there is an object from its own side, then there is no basis to project anything. If there is no basis to project anything, there wouldn't be projections. If there is no projection, then there will be no aversion, no craving for that. If there is no craving and aversions, then many other emotions that arises because of that will also stop. And that is why they say that if you can cut that ignorance, then you can cut all the delusions. So, does these flowers or any objects exist as that object from its own side, objectively? That is because that is how we perceive and we believe. But is that the reality or not? And that is where I think different school of thought might have a different view on that. And in Madhyamika, middle way school Prasangika, they said there's nothing from its own side objectively. And to understand that, I don't know, if I give you one example and we can see whether it helps, not help. I like to kind of take the example of first maybe the table. Does this table exist as a table from its own side, objectively? To us it seems yes, But if you analyze, it can be interesting, If table exists as a table objectively from its own side, Does all the being experience as that? Does it function as a table for all the beings? Does everyone experience as that? For a cat, is it the table for cat? Does it function as a table for cat? Maybe not. For the cat, it functions as maybe a seat, instead of table, maybe a cushions or seat to rest on. That's how they experience. That's how they see. For another, it is not closed, but if it is a closed table, then for another beings, they might see it as a shelter. Maybe dog or another insect, animals, maybe even a bird, they might see it as a shelter. They experience as a shelter. They don't see it as a table. They don't experience as a table. It doesn't function as a table to them. So all these different beings experience differently. It has a different function to them. So what is it? Itself. Normally we think it's stable from its own side, objectively. No cautions. But now if we think and talk in that way, contemplate, if it is a table from its own side objectively, then why does not it is experience? Why does not it is table for everyone, all the beings? And even among the human beings, it can be different. Maybe at the very beginning of human existence, when we were still in evolution, when it's still kind of living like a wild, in that when someone sees that, probably they don't experience as a table at that moment when they first see it. It doesn't function as a table for them. It might function something else. It might be something them. It experience something them, but it is not table for them. They are not functioning with the table. But if something exists as a table, for example, from its own side objective, then it should be that regardless of whoever. Everyone has to experience that way. It has to have that function for everyone and that. So therefore, and that will be same with the flowers, everything. Cup, take a cup, It doesn't function as a cup for many of the animals. They don't experience as a cup. They don't see as a cup. They don't have the same functioning of cup that it has for us. So if it exists as a cup from its own side objectively, then it should be experienced everyone same, has the same functioning for everyone, should be seen same, but that is not the case. It seems, depending on the individual beings' experience and perceptions and many others conditions, they see differently, they experience differently, it functions differently for each of them. And all of them are right. It's not like some of them are cuckoo, you know. Of course, if someone is mentally not stable or they have some illness, then you can't. But all of those have mind, but they're just different. And so what is this then? How can it be different objects and different experience, different function for each of them? If that is the case, if all of them are right in what they experience, what function for them, how they experience, then it is clear it is not as stable from its own side. It depends on many other conditions. You know? And same with the cup, the flower, everything. Mm. And it is very, when one has that kind of understanding or a view, your mind becomes very open, spacious. When our mind believes whatever object that is from its own side as that object, your mind becomes very fixed, rigid, narrow. And that is what problem we have. We all have very rigid mind, very fixed mind, very narrow mind. And one of the problem conflict is that. But if we have understanding, I might experience as a table, but it can be something for someone, it can be something for something. My mind is much open. I don't have to grasp and cling and say, this is stable and it is stable because this is what I experience. Because this is what I see, this is how I experience, therefore, this is the reality, it should be that way. Therefore, if you experience differently, if you see differently, you are totally off. You are totally wrong. You are totally ignorant. At the moment, we have this strong view about that. And again, because that comes from that kind of belief that there is whatever object that is existing from its own side objectively that, and that is the reality and that. But when someone has that kind of understandings, there's nothing from objectively from its own side. It depends on many other factors, the person's, experiences, many other factors that come into the conditions to how you see, how you experience, and then your mind is not so fixed in that. You accept this is what you see, this is what you experience, but that could be not the same for everyone else. So if someone says they experience differently, they see it differently, you don't get so offended, you don't say so angry, you don't feel that they are kind of, you don't look down them because they don't understand anything, all of that, that kind of attitude. And therefore, they come with this, the idea, there's nothing from its own side objectively or ultimately, but everything's relative. Everything's relative. Everything's relative. Everything depends relative, depending on many causes and conditions. Everything's dependent arisings. Everything's dependent arisings. Depending on many other cause, condition, factors. So depending on that, so therefore things can be different. Therefore everything's relative. There's nothing ultimate or absolute. So that is their view of the reality. Their view of ultimate reality or nature of things is everything's relative and dependent arisings. Nothing is absolute. Nothing is absolute. Nothing exists inherently. Nothing exists objectively from as it is from its own side. What it is, it depends on many factors, many conditions. So from the Prasangika point of view, so that is the view of that is seeing all things, including yourself, your experience, your mind, your physical form, and everything that is surrounding you, everything that you see, everything you hear, everything you smell, everything you taste, everything you touch, everything that comes in your mind, thought, all of them, everything's relative. There's nothing absolute. Even the enlightenment is relative, not absolute. Even the path that leads to enlightenment is also relative, not absolute. So that is their view and understanding of that. And because everything is interconnected, dependent arisings, interrelated, and therefore, therefore, there is connection between our experience and others' experience. How I act affects others. How others affect me. How I act affects the planet. How I act affects the beings in the planet. How I act or how I think, even how I think and how I act affect not only just my families, friends, much beyond that. The planet the world, the planet that we live in, all the beings that live in that planet, that world. Because we are not isolated, independent individuals. There's interconnections, and therefore, taking care of the world that we live in, taking care of others is taking care of yourself. It's not something separate from taking care of yourself. It is actually part of taking care of yourself. And so, with that understanding, just as we cherish ourselves, we learn to cherish others as well. Because cherishing others is not only cherishing others, it's also cherishing yourself indirectly. Taking care of others is indirectly taking care of yourself. When everyone in your neighborhood is happy, you will have less problem. When everyone in the neighborhood is upset and have a problem, even you are doing well, you will be affected by that. You might not have problem yourself, but all the colleagues in your workplace, if they are they are unhappy and they are disturbed, and you can't avoid not feeling that energy and being affected by that, because you live in that, where you cannot avoid that. If they are doing better, if they are more happy, peaceful, not only them, it affects you. The environment for everyone is better. Sometimes I think we don't understand that. Sometimes we feel like taking care of is totally kind of ignoring yourself or your well-being. Why should I take care of someone? Because it's nothing to do with my well-being, my happiness. Well, we are seeing more and more of that happening. When you ignore the problem of your neighbor, and then slowly it becomes your problems. Because we don't live in totally isolated, independent, unrelated. We are interdependent, interrelated, dependent arisings. And therefore, not only for well-being others, also for well-being yourself as well, we need to cultivate the cherishing thought for others by cultivating true love, compassion, and so forth. When we develop that mind or attitude, it makes your mind more ease, less disturbed, less agitating, keep your mind more, and it brings more positive energies, And with that mind, you are able to do more benefit and help to others. And when others, when they feel your energy of love, compassion, sense of concern, care, also they respond more in that way. Then you receive also from them the help, the support. And so therefore, one need to cultivate that for your own happiness and happiness for others. Whereas the self-centeredness doesn't bring happiness for others, nor it brings happiness for yourself. Instead, it brings, more pain and suffering to yourself and to others. Because when we have strong self-centeredness, that self-centeredness feel like that you want to be treated by the center of the world. And when you are not treated like you are the center of the world, you get disappointed, upset, and angry, or he or she doesn't love me because he doesn't treat me that way. He doesn't care about me because he didn't listen to me, she didn't say anything to me, or I wanted to do that, she didn't want to do that way, So you want everyone to agree and do what you want. And when that is not done, then you feel kind of a little bit hurt. A little bit hurt. Sometimes very hurt, sometimes little hurt. Feel like you are not being supported. Feel like you are not being heard. Feel like they don't care about you. Why do we feel so hurt with all these small things like that? Even when they have been being very supportive so many times, but sometimes when they don't agree and support, and then why do we feel that? Because we feel like I should be the center, everyone should listen, and everyone should be nice to me. I don't have to be nice to them. They should be nice to me. You know, that is how we feel like, and that comes from that kind of self-centeredness. Sometimes we might be, oh, I don't have self-centeredness. I don't feel like I don't feel like others should feel me in the center of the world. How is that? But check it, very subtle way, very subtle way. Why we get hurt, disappointed in that? With that, because of that. Because we feel like we feel like we should be treated in a certain way, and then when that is not treated in that way, that is when we feel hurt, disappointed. So that is how it leads to a lot of pain, feeling hurt all the time. In our life, we feel hurt at home, we feel hurt at our home workplaces, we feel hurt by our friends, we feel hurt by here and everywhere. We always feel hurt all the times. And that feeling of hurt then gives rise to many negative feelings and thoughts, isn't it? Then you started to have negative thoughts about that person. Why did you started to feel negative, have negative thoughts about other persons? Because you felt hurt, isn't it? Why did you feel hurt? Because you expected to be treated in a certain way and you feel like that was not done. But if we don't have that attitude, kind of sense of attitude like being treated like the king, the center of the world, if someone doesn't trust you, says, you don't care so much, you don't feel so hurt. If you don't feel hurt, you don't have those negative feelings towards that person because of feeling hurt. So therefore, less self-centeredness means less hurt by others' behavior, actions, attitudes. That means less sufferings. Less hurt, when you feel less hurt, that means it stops a lot of negative, bad feeling that arises because of those feeling of hurt. And when you have those bad feelings, that also make more painful. And not only that, then when we feel hurt and then started to have negative feelings, thought, then a lot of time we have a negative attitude, and sometimes we say in the words, sometimes we express physically, and that hurts the other persons. Then you get hurt, or you feel hurt, and you hurt the other persons. Everyone hurts. Everyone suffers. If you try to go back, why is there so much being hurt? And because of that. Because basically that selfish attitude or self-centeredness. And to counter that self-centeredness, then we need to develop sense of more cherishing thought for others. And so that was why we're talking about cultivating true love, compassion, and the awakened mind Bodhisattva, that the more we are able to develop that, but the more stronger we have that, the less self-centeredness. And with that less self-centeredness, the less hurt you receive, the less hurt you create to others. So I think we will stop and then have a break, yeah. And then after the break, then I will take questions. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So please feel comfortable to ask any questions. Just said that I wouldn't have all the answers, but we can discuss. See. Yes, please.
Thank you so much for tonight as well. My question is, and it might be a little bit unrelated, but when you're talking about the table and how we all perceive it as something different, is it actually really a table? Like, is what we're actually seeing an illusion, or is that something that you might be able to answer?
Seeing the table as inherently existing or existing from its own side objectively is like illusions, because that's not how it really exists, but it appears to exist that way to our mind. So that is why it's like illusions. But there is a table on conventional level or relative level, due to, putting together of the different parts and everything, and it has certain functions, for us, it has certain function of the table, and for us, it's a function as a table, and so it's a relative table, but there is nothing absolute table. Maybe in some another example, maybe if I give maybe sometime it can be helpful. When I move my feet, movement of my feet, what is that? Is it going or coming?
Could be either or.
Yeah, it's neither of them. It's by itself is neither of them. But depending on other condition, it could be coming or going. From the other condition, from looking from other side, is coming. From the condition from this side, is going. So that's why we call it relative, because depending on other cause condition, it could be either of them. It could be going, it could be coming, depending on other factors and conditions. But by itself is neither coming or going. And that is where we are talking about the table by itself is neither table, but depending on other conditions, it could be table, relatively table, due to many other conditions and factors. But by itself, there's no absolute tableness. And just as by itself is that movement is neither coming or going. Yes, please.
So this is a seeking clarity question and your view on it. So listening to you, I've been thinking we are not our thoughts, and then I've been thinking and we're not our feelings. And the way that I've thought up until today is that we have sensations in our bodies that our mind interprets, that becomes a feeling. And that's how I've operated till today, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about that.
I think there is a bodily feeling and mental, emotional feelings. And so I think there is sensational feelings, but also not related with sensation, but maybe, others' sad feelings, joyful feelings. It doesn't always have to be something related with sensation, physical sensations. There is some feeling that is related with physical sensations, and there are certain feeling which is more mental level, less related with the sensation, physical level. So I think there could be both. So feeling doesn't always have to be related with the sensations or physical sensations.
mind that's the tricky one, that tells you what it is, that interprets what this is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
So, what was the exact questions? Is the
So the mind then is the one that tells the story, or has the narrative, or does the explanation, and that's
yeah.
and that's what we get trapped by. Is
Well, the mind can tell us correct or wrongly, so it depends. If it interprets correctly, then it doesn't trap us. It leads us freedom from being trapped. But when it is misinterpreted, then that is when we get trapped. And that is where the wisdom and ignorance comes. The ignorance which misinterpreted is both of them a mental state, ignorance and wisdom. The ignorance misinterpreted the reality, and that is what will trap us, keep us trapped. Where the wisdom interprets correctly what the reality is, and that help us to release from being trapped. So it depends on what state of mind.
okay. I get you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
But also the physical manifestation of the emotion would come like latent, so the mind does its projecting and interpreting, and there's anger first, and then maybe there's a physical manifestation of that anger. Would you say that the physical emotion comes late in that?
I think in some cases, for sure, the physical sensation that comes through anger, or even from a strong craving, this strong desire, can make your bodies in certain ways sensations. There could be all of that. But I think also sometimes, even without very strong of any of that, maybe I accidentally put my hand on fire. There's burning sensations, the feeling of burning. It's not necessarily with anything to do with desire or anger or my mind interpreting anything. It's just physical meeting with certain conditions, and that lead to that kind of sensation or feelings. But of course, there are other, just as you say, when you are angry, then your physical body acts in certain way, and then there is sensation. Same with the desire and other things. Yes, please.
So, with us choosing to perceive things a certain way based on our perceptions and our rigidness of mind, would you say that suffering is a choice, and that we're making that choice to suffer, or we cannot make the choice to suffer?
In a way, yes. Making choice to suffer is a kind of in a tricky way. We don't want sufferings, but we engage in the cause that lead to sufferings. Is it like someone having a problem with substance, alcohol, drugs, and they know it's a suffering, and sometimes they don't want to suffer, but somehow they cannot stop from not doing it. They cannot stop not drinking or not using the substance. And so they don't want to suffer. At the same time, they cannot stop engaging in actions that lead to the suffer. And similarly, I think that is unless someone practice over the time and they learn how to not to give the temptations and not to do that. So ordinary, if they don't have that tools, then it is you don't want to suffer. But of course, I think there is, for some people, I think maybe they don't even identify exactly the real cause of the sufferings. They cannot identify that. They don't recognize that. maybe they can see only some external conditions which they believe that is the cause of all the problems. And maybe they don't see the involvement of internal conditions of your own mind in that. And so in that cases, then they don't pay attention to the internal mind. And so therefore, even you just focus on the external condition, if you don't pay attention to the internal, your mind, then you cannot stop those sufferings. So for some, they are not even aware of that. For some, there is awareness of that, but they forget to put the effect, And for some, they don't forget, but maybe they don't have strong practice. So even when they try to apply, the practice is too weak and the negative emotion too strong. So it takes them time to really build up their practice where they can really confront those negative emotions by applying those different techniques, meditations, that. So I think, so again, so you can say yes and no. To some extent, it is like, for some, I think they don't recognize that, so it will be hard to say they choose to kind of suffer, even they don't want to suffer, but they choose to suffer. But for some, it almost becomes a little bit like that,
I was thinking of the example you said when you put your hand on the fire, and so then you feel pain.
Yeah.
So the pain is inevitable. The fire is going to cause the pain. But then you might have thought to yourself, I'm an idiot. I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do that? I feel embarrassed. Who saw it? And then that could be the suffering, like that your mind
Yeah.
looking into the suffering. Like
Yes.
you can't avoid the pain, but maybe you can avoid
Yes. We might not be able to change the physical pain that you already experience, but with that, due to that physical pain, then your mind can have a lot of turmoil, all kind of being guilty or feeling harsh on oneself and having all those different negative thoughts, or maybe even blaming the others, not having a sign that watch out for a fire, there is a fire, so we can have all different reasons and be upset and angry, whether with oneself, with others, or with your action, and then due to that we suffer a lot, not only the physical pain that you already, but coming after that is all from your mind. Yes, please.
How do you put that into action in real time? So let me give you an example. I meditate and I try to think about, and be aware of my actions and my feelings before I get into a discussion. So if you can't tell, my accent is from America and there's a lot going on. So
Yeah.
I find myself wanting to have conversations with people who have different views, but it's so egregious that I'm like, ah. And I would really like to be more like patient, because I feel like I want to listen and I want to understand, but my blood pressure just goes.
Well, I think maybe not only you, I think yeah. And that is why sometimes people decide not to discuss at all. And sometimes that might be the case. It depends on individuals. There are certain people who have different views, but who are open to listen, and then there are certain people who have made up their mind. They are not going to change their mind, their positions. You can give thousands of reasons, you can pile up them, give them evidence with this much, it's not going to change them anyway at certain time. Maybe they could change later, but in certain times, they are not ready. Their mind is strong. And in those cases, I feel like there's no point of discussing so much, in such. But also there are a lot of people who had maybe misinformed, or maybe people who didn't understand the full situations, or who saw, heard a little bit but not full, or depending on other situation, maybe they might, but their mind is quite open to have listen and discuss and to really, and with that, I think one can, having a discussion can be helpful, to understand their point of view and as well as present our point of view, and with more respect to each other's and each other's point of view, even though we might not agree, but being respectful of that. And in those cases, I think it is good to have discussion and willing to have a discussions that could be helpful for both. It can be helpful for both. In such cases, I find helpful to understand why they come to that conclusions, or how did they reach to that conclusions. And I might not agree with their view, but I can understand why they came to that point, why. So you can understand them, you can feel compassion for them, even though you don't agree with their point of view. And I think, so it helped not to be so upset and angry with that person's, even though you don't agree with their opinion and their views, but you can understand why they are feeling that way, and why they have that view, and why they took that decision, or whatever, why they did that, where it come from, and so just as we want them to be more kind of open, we also have to keep our mind open and not fix this is the best, or this is the reality, or whatever, that maybe I could be wrong, even though I strongly feel about this, even though I strongly believe and feel that with all the information, with everything that I know, or everything that I've experienced, or whatever different. But even in those cases, sometimes still we can be sometimes wrong, or sometimes we might not be always correct. Having that kind of open mind can be helpful, instead of rejecting from the very beginning when someone started to say totally opposite of what you thought, what you have learned, or sometimes what we have felt, and I think that can help, just trying to work with our mind to be more open in that way, to that I could be, that it's not necessarily I could be always right, yeah. Yes, please.
Thanks so much for your talk earlier. Thanks, Martin, Maria, and Tara for organizing. My question has a little bit of preamble, so if I may, my understanding is that the Hindu mystics before the Buddha, they already spoke about the six sense doors, and the fact that all suffering comes either from attachment to the object of desire, or aversion to the object of aversion. So this was a knowledge we had before already. And what I was told, and that's what I'd like to hear from you, what do you think, that the contribution of the Buddha was that in the dependent of origination, there was a missing link. There was these, the sensations in the body that happens when I have a dislike or a like in the mind. So a like to the object of desire, or dislike to the object of aversion. So that's what I was told, and I'm curious if that's your understanding, that this was the main contribution of the Buddha, this missing link in the dependent origination. I noticed that you mentioned the dependent origination a few times, some of aspects of it, so perhaps if you could expand on dependent origination, would be great as well. Thank you.
I think many earlier school of thoughts also talk about desire, that you need to get release from the desire and anger. I think that is more or less kind of general kind of understanding. And to do that, there are certain meditation stages that is common to both Buddhists and Hindus or earlier school of thoughts. Some shamatha meditations, but I think there was a difference. The difference was many of those who believed there was some kind of permanent self, and Buddha rejected that permanent and inherently existing self and inherently existing any objects. So that is the difference. From Buddhist point of view, as long as you don't, as long as you have grasping of permanent soul or atma or self, then you will never get out of attachment to yourself. Because you are grasping, there is a inherently existing permanent soul or atma, and so when you have that, then the grasping comes. So when there's a grasping, then attachment, those you cannot get rid of them permanently. Through those different shamatha meditation, you can reduce those anger, you can reduce those attachments, you can release from strong arising of that, manifesting, but it is still there on a subtle level. As long as that, and so therefore the Buddha's understandings and his message was there's no permanent and inherent self, and that is a huge difference. That is one of the biggest difference.
So dukkha and impermanence were there, but the non-self was not there.
Yeah, no, sometimes even they use non-self, but it's a different ways. Sometimes they use non-self in a way that you surrender yourself to the God. So there is no sense of self separate from the God. You totally kind of become selfless in that you totally surrender yourself to the God. That is, so even though even they use the same word, selfless, is a different. And sometimes you also see non-dualistics, also there is some teaching in that. Also sometimes, even though we use same word, but when you try to understand what the meaning of that, there's meaning of selflessness, the meaning of non-dualistics, and then you begin to understand there is subtle differences. Yeah.
And the dependent origination, would you mind giving 2 minutes?
Yeah, dependent originations,
Please.
there is understanding of dependent originations, I think, in a sense that all the conditioned phenomena are dependent on its cause and condition. Nothing comes, no conditioned phenomena can come existing without depending on its preceding cause and conditions, and if we look in the external world, it's clear, and now with the development in technology, I think there is more and more understanding of that. I think maybe in the past, maybe we have less understanding of that. Now we know, less for climate, when all the action, totally different part of the world affect that other part of the continent. What happened in that continent affect the here. Maybe in the past, maybe there was no understanding long time ago before we have technology, but now there is enough technologies, the forests, rainforests in Amazon affecting that, the glacier in the Himalayan affecting, and vice versa, and all others. So I think everything that change has cause and conditions. So they are depending arisings in that. But also everything that exists, it depends on its part. Nothing can exist as a whole without depending its parts. There's nothing that is not without part. Even if you go to the most subtle level of the atoms, most subtle level of consciousness, moment of consciousness, everything has its part. So therefore, again, it depends on its parts. Nothing can exist independently by itself without depending on its parts. And therefore, again, and then even that, not only that, then they also talk about, not only that, it also depends on the, within the Buddhist school of thought, again, many different, as I said, there are 4 different schools of thought, and they have slightly different understanding on that, especially this issue of depending on your mind, the subject, the mind, everything to exist as that object, it also depends on the mind. Without depending on the mind, the things cannot exist by itself. So from that perspective, also dependent arisings, and that is, I think, most subtle and difficult point where they have among the dependent arising, understanding of that is the most subtle and most difficult, and also more important. Yes, please.
Thank you, Geshe.
Yes.
How is feeling tone determined?
Determine?
Yeah, as in positive or negative or neutral, but if it's perceived, how is it perceived as positive or who, like, not kind of like who is perceiving it as positive, or what conditions are forming it to be that, considering if it's perceived, it sounds like there would be an objective thing, like pain is always bad. But then it's not to some people, pain is pleasurable. So then at the feeling tone, could you clarify, like, how is that feeling tone perceived as negative or neutral or positive? Am I clear? Does that make sense?
How is it defined, the feeling as pleasure or neutral or? I guess there might be a few different way of looking at that. From the causal point of view, any feeling that is a result of wholesome actions is defined as pleasant feelings. Any feeling that is a result of unwholesome actions is defined as unpleasant feelings. And any feeling that is a result of neutral actions or neutral minds will be defined as neutral feelings from the point of view of the cause. From the result point of view, any kind of feeling that give rise to aversions can be defined as an unpleasant feeling. Any kind of feeling that give rise to attachment or desire, craving, can be defined as a unpleasant feeling. And any feeling that give rise to a sense of indifference, could be more neutral experiences.
So then, if you're attached to something, wouldn't that be after conception? Why is it at perception then?
isn't it?
So if you're attached, if you have like a nice pleasure when someone's touching you like that.
Yeah.
Why would that be why would you be attached to that at the point of not the mind consciousness, but like the sense organ consciousness, like being skin, do you know what I mean? Why is that at the feeling tone level, not at the conception level?
Attachment itself.
Yeah.
Why attachment to that?
Yeah.
So why is it at the perceptual level rather than the conceptual level? So if it's at the level of just pure perception, why does it happen before it's conceptualized? I think that's what the question is. Is that?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Why is it pleasurable at the level of perception before there's any conception?
Well, it is similar like what I was telling, putting hand on the fire. And even without conception, the moment you feel it is a feeling of burn, and that immediately give kind of aversion to that or dislike to that.
But some people can like that.
I think that some people can like it, maybe not necessarily neutrally, but I think that like can come from different conditions, other conditions. Like people being attached to sufferings, miserable, I think is by nature is not, they are not attached to that, but certain conditions lead to that that state later. So
then can I probe a little bit more?
Yes, please.
Sorry, everyone. So if I'm eating an orange and I like the orange, the flavor of the orange on my taste would be that's an attachment there, right?
Not necessarily.
Then when does the attachment kick in?
Of someone can experience orange without attachments, arhat, or the bodhisattvas, high level of bodhisattvas, and not to talk about the fully enlightened one. They can experience the orange more, they enjoy more than ourselves. That doesn't mean attachment is involved there.
Okay, so their feeling tone would be more neutral. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, they will have they can have full enjoyment. Maybe we don't have full enjoyment because our mind is kind of, our mind attached, and because of that attached, our mind become kind of narrowed. It is like you cannot fully enjoy, you only enjoy what you are attached to. Whereas someone who has no attachment, they can enjoy the fullness of that. So therefore, for example, if I'm attached to a particular flavor, particular this and that, then I can only enjoy if I can have that particular flavor, particular amount of spicy, particular amount or whatever that I'm attached to. Whereas someone who doesn't have that, they can enjoy all part of that. If a little bit more this flavor, that flavor, they can, what a surprise, it's a nice flavor, or this is a new revelation, so they can actually enjoy more of that. When you have attachment, it constrains your enjoyment only for very limited. And so I think without attachment, people can enjoy more, not less.
Did you say that then attachment is quite connected to expectations then? Because if you expect something, then that's when you develop.
Yeah, there is attachment and expectation always come together. When there is attachment, the expectation there. Yeah. Yes, please.
I'm actually raising my hand for Tara.
Okay.
So just going back to the thing of the opinion thing, I understand the importance of understanding how another person reached that conclusion, But for example, I hate to use this example because it's quite vulgar, but like Hitler, he had certain opinions, but they were so harmful for other sentient beings. So even though you understand how he reached that conclusion through ignorance and so forth, isn't there also a very important aspect of education?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that's just...
No, sure. Sure, of course, there need to be education that they don't end up in that conclusions and does that kind of damage, so much damage to others, you know. But it's more about, it's not about, of course, we have to limit their harm. And to limit their harm, whatever way we can help them to not come to that kind of harmful conclusions, where coming that what I was saying is, you know, someone can end up like become a very cruel, mean, unkind, that due to many circumstances, you know, maybe their upbringings, maybe surroundings, maybe their experience, sudden experience, and then they're misinterpreting that differently. So all those can play, many conditions can come together to make who that person's and their actions. So when you understand that, you understand their harmful actions and you don't agree with that, and it shouldn't happen, and it shouldn't happen in the futures, and we try to avoid that as much as possible. But at the same time, you can feel why that person become like that. And so when you understand and feel that why that person become like that, you can feel compassion. Then we think, if I am in that person, I might have become like that person. I could have become. I never in our mind, I will never want to be that person. Absolutely. But I'm very fortunate, lucky. I didn't grow up or in that kind of surrounding. If I was in that kind of upbringing surrounding, I could have become that person, that very person I don't want to be. And in that point of view, then, you know, you can feel for the persons, but that doesn't mean their actions are okay. So that is why one of the great Indian masters, his name was Aryadeva. He was one of the main disciples of Nagarjuna, and he in one of his writings, you know, 400 verses, he talked about the need to differentiate the person and person's actions. You know, while we totally disagree with the person's action because that is harmful, hurtful, and we should try to stop such harmful actions, at the same time feel compassion for that person. So feeling compassion for that person doesn't mean allowing that person's actions and saying it's okay or that being excuse. But at the same time, one can feel compassion, at the same time not only disagree but stop in whatever way we can some actions. And I think that is very important. And he made that decision. He said that is what Buddha made the decision. He said the exact words is something like the Buddha said, he mentioned the fault is not of that person, but the fault is of that person's delusions. You know, and due to that person delusions, then person act in such harmful way. And that and the person will have to differentiate the actions and that. And so I feel that is very important. When we don't appreciate, when we don't differentiate, that's two things. Then either we cannot feel compassion for that person, or if we feel compassion for that person, then it feel like that means we agree with them, and that means their actions are okay, and you know. So then we have that challenge, difficulty. But when you differentiate, then you shouldn't struggle. While you feel compassion for the persons, but at the same time you totally reject and stop such harmful behavior. Yes, please.
So, Geshe, so through what many people have shared, and you also, I'm wondering about the antidote to that internal battle and the external battles there are many, that we have in ourselves, and individuals everywhere have the internal battle, whether it's drugs, alcohol, negative thinking, unhelpful habits, and then all the external battles, the politics, the suffering that we see. And could you talk a little bit about the antidote? So rather than we could focus on the battle, we can choose to do that, or we can generate the antidote in ourselves and maybe emanate.
Yeah, the antidote are cultivating the opposite positive state of the mind. So just as, and so those are different type of meditations. There are non-analytical meditation. There are some analytical meditations. There are different forms of analytical meditations, and so I think learning those different tools of meditations and practice are the tools and the antidotes, that one need to,
Focus, choose.
Yeah. Yes, that will be my last questions.
How do you make a difference between giving compassion to someone, but also their actions are hurting you, but you're continually giving that compassion because you understand that they're caught up in their own mindset?
Mm-hmm.
How can you do this with, well, I have to come to a conclusion and it will hurt that person, but I don't want to.
Uh-huh.
How do you go about that?
Compassion state of mind, and sometimes with two actions, even we don't want to hurt because of their interpretation, because of that, they feel hurt. And sometimes there's nothing we can do about it. Certain time you have to take actions, sometimes for the betterness of the everything. Any actions we take, a lot of time is going to hurt someone. If you say yes, some people are going to hurt. If you say no, some of you are going to hurt. If you try to remain in the middle, some people are going to hurt. If you try to remain neutral, and how can you become neutral? How can you just not be against it or for it? So some people get hurt and their feeling get hurt because you are trying to be in the middle, and then if you whatever you say. So I think as long as our intention is right, that is the word key is. The main is intentions. Why we are, whatever decision we are taking, whatever we come to certain conclusions or certain decision, with what intentions, I think that is the key. And if we have the right intentions, even someone get hurt because people interpret differently, and because their interpretation, if they get hurt, there is nothing we can do about it, and also there is nothing that we need to feel so guilt about that too. Even when Buddha spoke, a lot of people get hurt at his time. When Dalai Lama talked, a lot of people get hurt, whether it's a spiritual level, whether it's a political level. For some of the decisions he took on political level, what he call middle way approach, more kind of he's looking for more autonomous regions within the constitutions, not for independence. A lot of young Tibetans were hurt. A lot of young people thought he abandoned their cause. But again, so even those enlightened beings, when they take decisions, people get hurt because everyone like to be, the way they think or what they believe. And when that's not done, then sometimes we get hurt. So there's nothing we can do about that, And we cannot stop not taking action because someone will get hurt, or not get hurt, but feel hurt. If I start not take any actions, then I'm not doing my responsibility, because if I'm responsible, I have to take decisions. And of course, you have to have the right intention to do for the better and best of the majority and for more of organization, whatever. But there will be a lot of people who will be hurt because they don't agree. And then because of that, because they have a strong grasping to that. And so that means, as a leader, you should stop taking responsibility and make any decision, because otherwise someone is going to feel hurt. No, so then you do have to take a decisions. And it's always someone is going to feel hurt. But as long as your intention is pure and your intention not to hurt them, but still they feel hurt, there's nothing we can do about it. Yeah. Okay? Okay. Yes.
No, it's totally okay.
Yeah? If you have question, yeah, please.
Oh, okay. Thank you. It was actually connected to a number of things that you've said, and in particular, your question around harm. And I've got a few questions, but the question was really around harm, not just individual harm, but on a national level and on a global level, where there's so much harm outside. And not that I'm a historian, but for as long as I know and understand, there's been harm in the human life for a long time. My question is causing harm, and perhaps the other side, survival of self, is that part of being human? Is that part of the human condition of a human being? And are there some humans that can differentiate from that? And if that is so,
Some human differentiate from what?
yeah, let me just take that back. I guess I was thinking, from what you've said tonight, you've talked about us being responsible for our good experiences and responsible for our bad experiences. And my mind went, of course, to the wars and the atrocities in
Yeah.
Israel. And to put it simply, how do you have any words of how you kind of make sense of those circumstances as being a human, I suppose? The things you said tonight.
I think when I said there is a word, I use primarily our actions, but there is a contributing conditions. And so primarily there is our karmic potentials, involved there, but also there is immediate cause and condition, what we call secondary or cooperating conditions. And so therefore, if we stop creating those, even someone has karmic potential to experience something they don't have to experience. And so therefore, those can be stopped by doing that. So that is one thing. And as far as, human beings, I don't think all the human beings has to be like that. There are more enlightened human beings and there are less enlightened human beings. The less enlightened human beings, the more delusional we are and the more harm we do. It's not only about our survival, but also it's about harming others for your individual survival, then survival as the whole community or for the whole beings. So there can be even if it is survival, there can be it's just about my survival, and it's more important than all the rest of the other survival. Whereas there can be survival, but it's important survival the whole species, the whole communities, the whole human beings, the whole sentient beings survivals. And so again, even in terms of survival, they could have a different level of understanding for that survival and action, and someone's actions and behavior based on that understanding. So I think the more higher level of the beings, the bodhisattvas, I think even though there is about survival, the whole sentient beings, it's not just about their survivals. Whereas for more unenlightened beings, then it becomes more like my survival versus other survivals. So I think maybe not all human beings are the same categories. Within the human beings, there can be different categories, and even those who are in that lower category where they feel that their individual survival is more important than the survival of the rest of the beings or species or whatever, even they have the potential to go beyond that and to be able to feel and to be able to act for survival, not only themselves, but the whole community, the whole beings. There is the potential. Okay, thank you.